I'm telling you, this stuff changed my life, altered the course of my life, from milking cows to sitting on this stool. Incredible. What a journey. I want you to look now at the whole list that you've written and the exercises we've done. Now I want you to answer this question. What kind of person must I become to achieve all I want? What kind of person must I become to achieve all I want? Now we've got two things working. What you become helps you to achieve, and what you achieve helps you to become. And the more you become, the more you can achieve, and the more you achieve, the more you can become. Who knows which affects the other the most? So now just write this exercise. Start with a few sentences. We won't have time for you to, take a lot of time, but just start with a few sentences. Your concept of the person you think you must become to achieve what you want. This is time for a little truth here. Maybe you need to become much wiser than you are at the moment. You need to become stronger. You need to have better health. Maybe you need a little coaching to really become the person I want to become. I'm going to have some coaching. Physical coaching, spiritual coaching, developing skills coaching. To be the influence you want to be, you got to build an incredible reputation. What kind of person must I be to attract all that I want in my life and the people that I want and the opportunities that I want? When you knock on the door and opportunity opens, you must stand there as a very attractive person, or you may not be invited in. I usually take the simple approach to life and trying to figure it out or trying to comprehend it. The guy says, this happens to me, and this happens to me, and all this stuff happens to me. How come it all happens to me? And I say, I don't know. Best I've been able to figure out, those kind of things always happen to people like you. I think the simple approach is the best, or the witty approach. I come along 16 years ago to do some things for Herbalife, and one of my friends says, I heard that some people died using that Herbalife product, and I said, not that many. Here's what I found out. You cannot give a serious answer to a silly comment. You've got to return silly for silly. A little wit sometimes helps to just, disarm all the stuff that you don't want to take responsibility for. Lady Astor in the English Parliament was exasperated with Churchill. And she said, Winston Churchill, if you were my husband, I would put poison in your coffee. And Winston said, Lady Astor, if you were my wife, I would drink it. A few simple ideas can be so life-changing, whether it's economic or health. My mama said, you don't have to radically change. She recommended an apple a day. And I said, well, can I have some candy? She said, yes, if you have the candy and the apple, but not the candy as the substitute for the apple. See, that made sense to me. Okay, I can have candy if I've made sure I've had the apple, but not as the substitute for the apple. And she said it in such a simple way, I got it. Shof, my mentor in business, had the same unique style. When I said, hey, things cost too much, he said, no, you can't afford them. I thought, that's the new way to look at it. And he showed me these alternate ways to look at something. He said, how come you're not doing well? I showed him my paycheck. I said, this is all the company pays. He said, well, that's not true. I said, no, this is my check. He says, no, Mr. Rohn, this is all that the company pays you. This is not all that the company pays. Just in 2 or 3 sentences opened up a whole new world of consciousness to think about. He says, doesn't some people in the same company earn 4 or 5 times this amount that you're getting? I said, well, yes. He said, well, then this is not all that the company pays. And if you were 4 or 5 times more valuable than you are now, do you think this would multiply by 4 or 5? And I said, yes, I guess it would. He said, why don't we go to work on that? So you don't have to work on the company to pay you more money. You only have to work on yourself to become more valuable. Simple ways of saying things so simply. It doesn't have to be radical. The key is just to start. If you start making 3 presentations a day in a year, it's 1,000. The 1,000 seems like too many to do, but starting is easy. Then continuing and not yielding to the temptation to be careless and let it slide and go back to old habits. Just put it in your pocket. And then when you get home, you put it in the trash. And somebody says, well, what difference does that make? The little cellophane on the toothpick. Here's what makes the difference, the habit. And the habit makes the difference primarily for you. Now, yes, it makes a contribution, and a little small contribution by not leaving trash. But here's what it does mostly. Give you the incredible feeling of self-worth because you have good habits. That's the deal. The habit of turning out the lights when you're finished with your hotel room. You leave the hotel room, turn out the lights. It just makes a small contribution, but what if everybody did it? I'm telling you, the energy requirements would be less. You say, well, the hotel gets the benefit. Hey, it doesn't matter to you who gets the benefit. Guess what's the greatest benefit? being a person of unique habits. Habits that not only make you perform as far as skills are concerned, but habits that make you feel good about yourself. And then sometimes we get the question, why do it? And I got the best answer to that. Why not do it? If it's so easy to do, why not do all the easy things that make a contribution? And who knows what the total contribution could be if we all did it. But even if everybody doesn't, if you do it, and if I do it, it just makes us better human beings. It makes us feel better about ourselves. And if I know you do it, it makes me feel better about you. And if you know I do it, I think it makes you feel better about me. Say, wow, this man was taught some good things when he was growing up. Some countries of the world show unique respect. When I go to Mexico, I love to go to Mexico because they don't just say, hello, Jim Rohn. They say, hello, Mr. Jim Rohn. When they introduce me, they say, this is Mr. Jim Rohn. They don't say, this is Jim Rohn. It's just part of the custom. This is Mr. Jim Rohn. When I first came to the South, I remember just as a kid, and they said, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. I mean, where I was raised, we really didn't do that. But I think the more the South did it, the more it caught on, and now I'm beginning to hear that in a lot more places than just the South. Yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Things we can all learn. Helps make our lives better, helps make the world better, helps make people feel good about themselves, feel good about us. Incredible. So the environment, whatever little thing you can think of that gives you pride and joy in doing to make the contribution. As small as it may seem, you make it for what it does to the environment, for the people. But here's the biggest reason for what it does for you. I want to be the best I can possibly be at delivering the message of good words. So we keep working on our skills to be the best we possibly can.
When God told Moses to hold up the rod and the waters would part, I can imagine he was tempted to reason it out. God, what do you mean? These waters have been like this for years. You would think if the Israelites were going to somehow get across, it would take months for the waters to recede, become less and less. Maybe God would send a big drought. But when God spoke to Moses, nothing looked any different. Everything in his mind said it's impossible. It would take months or years of a drought. God, we only have a few hours before we're going to be recaptured. But God doesn't always do things on a normal timetable. He specializes in doing a quick work. He knows how to speed things up. What could have taken years, in one moment, God caused the winds to blow the waters back. They hurried out of the Israelites' way. Now you may have obstacles in your life that look permanent, but God is about to have them hurry out of your way. It's not going to happen gradually on a normal schedule like you were expecting. It's going to happen quickly, out of the ordinary. Things that you've been struggling with, fear, anxiety, a challenge in your health, that child that's off course. When you look at the waters, nothing looks any different. You know God is telling you a breakthrough is coming, but you don't see any sign of it. You want to believe, but your mind is telling you there's no way. But just like those waters hurried out of the Israelites' way, those obstacles are about to hurry out of your way. Now, you may have had that illness a long time. The prognosis doesn't look good. Receive this into your spirit. It's about to hurry out of your way. That legal trouble looks permanent. That financial difficulty, that situation at work seems like there's no end in sight. Now get ready. God's about to do a quick work. Lack, struggle, debt is about to hurry out of your way. It's going to happen suddenly. It's going to be a rapid turnaround. That's what happened for us here at Lakewood. When we acquired the Compact Center, a company filed a lawsuit to try to keep us from moving in. They said we violated the deed restrictions. Our attorneys told us it could be tied up in the courts for years. When we looked at the waters, like with Moses, nothing looked any different. A year had gone by, the other side wasn't about to budge. They had no contact with us. Looked like it could be that way for another 10 years. But one day, out of the blue, the other side called and said they wanted to meet. Our attorney said it was probably a ploy, just trying to distract us. We met with them, and in a couple of hours, they agreed to drop the lawsuit and let us have the building. When it's your time, God knows how to have enemies hurry out of your way.
I got to soar amongst the clouds. I got to soar amongst the clouds. I got to soar above the clouds. Nothing is going to stop my purpose.
Having wondered whether you gave it all you got, because it's going to transfer into the man you become when you leave here, and most importantly, it's going to be your identity. When you get tired, when you get fatigued, when you get down, when you're in a slump, it's your habits, rituals, routines, and your standards that carry you through.
So whether you have talent, whether you don't, the only thing that matters is, will you persevere? Will you stick with it long enough to get great?
Nothing is going to stop my purpose, because I got the attitude like an eagle. So keep on flying high. Don't let the rejection stop you. Don't let people tell you that you're not good enough. If you got an idea, then stand on it. If you got something in you and you want to share it with the world, put it out there. Maybe everybody is not going to listen. Maybe everybody doesn't want to hear what you got to say. Maybe everybody doesn't want you in their camp. You got to be that eagle. You got to get up. You got to fly. You got to soar. Sometimes you may want to come down, but you got to fly back up again.
All right, so here's the challenge that I have. So there are two groups of people walking the earth. Right? You got one group right now. Now, both groups have these dreams and these goals. Both groups, from the time that they were young, saw things on television, read things in books. They physically saw people doing things. It was like, yo, I want to do that. Like, I want that. I remember being a kid, you know, and I used to watch the Brady Bunch, and I used to be like, yo, I want a family like that. I remember watching it. See, my mom had me. She got pregnant at 17 with me. I didn't really start talking to my biological father, like literally having a conversation with my biological father until I was 30. So as a child, because I didn't have that, you know, traditional home, I remember looking at the Brady Bunch going, I remember, oh, Leave It to Beaver. Leave It to Beaver. Like, I just like that, you know, as Cleavers, like, they just had it going on. You know what I'm saying? They never like really argued. You know what I'm saying? Like, they worked everything out. Everybody like had roles and it was just, they were great.
Sometimes you got to cruise, but you got to be powerful even when you're cruising. Ego attitude is such a beautiful thing. It's truly magnificent. Just look at that eagle. Do you have that mindset? Do you trust in your abilities? Do you know that you have something special within yourself? Or do you trust in the things that people said you couldn't do? Did you let the world show you that you didn't have what it takes to be what you wanted to be? You never see an eagle complaining. You never see an eagle whining and worrying about how it's going to get its meal. The eagle knows what it must do.
Right? And so I remember growing up, like, yo, one day, like, this is my reality. But one day I'm gonna have a family just like Leave It to Beaver. Like, I remember saying it to myself. And I remember friends, like, they want to drive these kind of cars and live in these type of neighborhoods. I wasn't really thinking about that kind of stuff. I was just like, you know what? Like, one day I just want to have a happy family. Like, I want to come home and I want my kids to, like, run up to me, Dad. When they get older, I want them to be proud of me. Right? I just had these dreams. I'm gonna put my kids through college. They're not gonna have to pay for college. I'm gonna put them through college. Like, they're gonna go to, you know, these big colleges and whatever. I had dreams. Right? I had dreams. And so what I want you to do for me is I want you to, and I know a lot of you are adults and you're adulting, and sometimes you don't have time for dreams and goals and stuff. Right? But I want you to do me a favor. Like, don't let life do you like that.
As Thomas Edison said, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is to always try one more time. I know there are going to be a million times in your life where you want to give up, where you absolutely ache with the desire to quit, where nothing sits inside of your gut other than the certainty that you are going to fail, that you are not good enough to push forward. But that is to fundamentally misunderstand the nature of a failure. The nature of a failure is not to tell you who you are. The nature of a failure is to tell you a way that didn't work. It's to inform. It's to educate you. It's to test you. It's to be a gut check to find out if you believe in yourself enough to push forward even when the world seems to be telling you not to.
If you don't have good habits, you don't have good rituals, you don't have good routines, always in your life you will fall down in bad times, in slumps and fatigue and in stress.
I don't believe in faking it until you make it. You know what entrepreneurialism is, right? It's the greatest self-discovery process in the history of mankind.
And you learn more about yourself, what you don't know, your resiliency, how tough you are, what your weaknesses are by being an entrepreneur. It's probably the greatest self-discovery program in the history of the world. It's also this. It's the greatest self-improvement program with the highest compensation package possibly attached to it too. That's what entrepreneurism is, a self-improvement program with massive compensation package attached to it. And that's why too many of you are too focused on growing your company and not focused enough on growing you, because your company will never, ever exceed your identity or your vision.
And as Brian Tracy said, attempt the impossible in order to improve your work. Think about that for a second. Attempt the impossible just to get better, to try the things that you know are going to fail, things that the world is going to tell you simply cannot be. But even if it violates the laws of physics, if there's something in that attempt that you're going to learn, you owe it to yourself. You have a fucking moral obligation to try. Because all of the people that will lie in your wake are the people that didn't try simply because they didn't believe that they could do it. You have to be willing to look at the world. You have to be willing to see things that you yourself think are impossible and try. Because in that you will stretch yourself. You have to be willing to look inward at the state of your current skill set and say, I'm going to play outside of that. I'm not going to play where it's safe.
Forward. You got to grow you, because what will happen when it starts to grow, you'll start making unconscious mistakes to shrink it, making bad calls, getting weak, getting lazy, making mistakes. You're all nodding because you've all done it, because at some point your business got ahead of you. It will never exceed your identity and your vision. Because if the company catches your vision, the company catches your identity, you're dying.
One of the things that human beings underestimate dramatically is their capacity to get great at something if they're totally immersed in it, totally laser focused on something. But as I've coached the very high-end athletes in my life, the top business people and entertainers, I can tell you that most people underestimate what total obsessive laser focused really is and what it looks like, because you are way more powerful than you know you are if you went crazy, psycho, obsessed, laser focused on anything, even something you're totally ill-prepared for. Humans have an unreal capacity to get great at things, even if they don't have a natural talent for it, if they're immersed in it, and to learn something and acquire a ton of knowledge in a short period of time as well.
I'm going to play where it hurts. I'm going to play where I feel clumsy. I'm going to play only in the areas that make me feel stupid, because in that I know that the way that the brain responds is through adaptation, but I have to stress myself. You can't ever lose sight of that. The only way that the human animal adapts is through stress. You have to be willing to break things in order to build something new. So if you want to push the boundaries, if you want to see just how far you can go, if you want to succeed at the highest level, if you want to play on a global scale, you have got to be willing to try the impossible, because right now, the things that you need to do are impossible for you, but they won't remain that way forever. And as Aristotle said, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. This doesn't have to be a tale of always being terrified. Everybody, myself included, screaming at you, telling you that you need to go do something great. The part they're leaving out is why the fuck should you care?
In your soul, there have been times in your life, I know, when you've had something that you wanted so much. Maybe you wanted something for someone you care about. Maybe you wanted something for yourself, but you became so obsessed with something, achieving it, experiencing it, whether it was a transformation, in yourself, changing your business, making a certain amount of money, getting a job, increase of some position. Somewhere in your life, you've gotten obsessed enough to really want to create something that you may not even know how you were going to do it. But you just wanted it, desired it, that you started all of a sudden taking action, and you got insights. And before you knew it, what used to be just this impossible dream became a reality. Is it fair to say that at some stage in your life that there are some things today in your life that were once just a dream or a goal, that once seemed difficult or impossible, whether it be the job you have or the relationship you're in and might be taking for granted? Well, then you and I are creators. And very often when we get overwhelmed by so many things we feel out of control by, we start getting into being managers of our life, managing our pain, managing through the situation. You've got to allow yourself to be able to take advantage of uncertainty. You have to work on change. Change is automatic. Progress is not. Progress comes when you tell yourself the truth and you're able to feel the uncertainty and take action anyway. The thing that stops us all is fear. It's no surprise. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown, fear of not looking good. And that fear we could translate into the simple thing of uncertainty. Someone who's incredibly successful, someone who's truly a leader in their life or in their field. The one thing they have in common is they exude this sense of certainty. Great leaders know how to step in the uncertainty and bring the certainty to the situation.
I think that's why Paul said you've got to learn how to walk by faith and not by sight. That once you begin to trust yourself and your ideas and your instincts, life takes on a whole new meaning, because now I want you to do that feeling that you are led. Just feel, I am led. Ladies and gentlemen, don't give your power away. You don't need anybody to approve your dream. It was given to you. If they can't see it, it's because it wasn't given to them. It was given to you. Hold it, nourish it, cultivate it, work on it. It's yours. It's your baby. Work on it until it comes into fruition. I gave away my power and I said, I'm not going to do that no more.
No limit people are human beings who take what they are and accept it, and don't tell themselves that somehow they're deficient because of anything about themselves. This is a very crucial concept for me and for virtually all of us. It's this idea of taking your life in your own hands and being the kind of person that you choose to be, and understanding that everything that comes your way is an opportunity, is a blessing. And it wasn't until I learned how to celebrate virtually everything that came my way that I was able to transcend it. Everything else that you have on our planet, that we have on our planet, comes about as a result of thinking. Thought makes it so. All right? Everything that you see that wasn't given to us was created by man as a result of the way that we think, So what gets inside of us as a cell comes about as a result of the way that we choose to think in our lives. Very important principle to understand, because once you get a hold of thinking and that it creates everything that you have in your life, you can change and make it as absolutely perfect as you want it to be, because thought makes it so.
When you make decisions about what to focus on and what things mean and what to do, when you're unconscious, you get pretty terrible results usually. Now, we've all done this. I do it still. We all do. But if you want to change your results, you got to become more conscious in your decision making. So think about it. What you focus on, you will feel. Whether it's true or not. You focus on how people don't care, you're going to feel they don't care. Second decision you make is what do things mean. So you focus on something someone does and you come up with a meaning, and the meaning is, no one loves me. The meaning is they're trying to take advantage of me. Depending on what meaning you come up with, and you get to choose the meaning of anything. For some people, they say, this situation happened with the economy, and what that means is, I'm going broke. Somebody else said, the situation happened with the economy, guess what? That means I'm going to work harder, I'm going to be more creative, it changed everything. Everybody else is going to quit, so we're going to dominate the marketplace. For people to do it. Is this the...
Now you're here right now. You got it and you handled that fear. You kicked it out of there. All right? Remember that play Color Purple? I remember when Albert told the girl she couldn't go with Sure. He said, where you going? You know, this girl been wanting all her life live her dream. But she was afraid. She felt incompetent and he had beaten her down and her self-esteem had eroded. He said, where you going? You can't talk, Sure can talk. You ugly, you dumb, Sure got class, you ain't got nothing. Where you going? You ain't gonna make it, you're gonna fail. She said, look here, I might be ugly, I might be dumb, I might can't talk. She said, but I'm still here. I'm still here. And so as you begin to look at the fears in back of you, you came through those fears and you're still here. See, that's a testament about how powerful you are. And so whatever the volcano is, you have the capacity to take that volcano on, the capacity to jump in it
and find your true identity. Here's another thing that keeps a lot of people from taking on the volcanoes and jumping into the challenges that they're confronted with. The fear of making mistakes or not feeling good enough. Guess what? You're going to make some mistakes. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. Guy said this, and it's true. He said the person who has never made a mistake hasn't done anything. You're going to make some mistakes if you want to do something out here. You're going to fall flat on your face. You're going to be criticized when you come out into the arena called life. You're going to feel awkward and stupid and dumb sometimes. It goes with the territory. But it's okay. What's important is that you bring your stuff out here. Are you good enough? Prepare yourself. See, there's no substitute for competency. A positive attitude won't get it. Being enthusiastic won't get it. So you got to prepare yourself. You've got to develop yourself. You've got to practice. You've got to work. You've got to do your homework. You've got to do your research. See, a lot of people have a yes, I can attitude, but a no, I can't aptitude. And competency builds confidence. And confidence feeds into competency. See, the better you become, the more confident you feel. And the more confident you feel, the better you want to become. You realize that you have no ceiling. That you can better whatever you've done so far. You can go beyond that. You don't become cocky and arrogant, feeling that you've already arrived, as most people have. And that's why they've settled for less than what they rightly deserve in life. Because they feel they've arrived and they say, well, I can rest now. I can rest on my laurels now. I've made it.
Stop doing the things that you know are wrong that you could stop doing. Right? So it's a fairly limited attempt. First of all, we're not going to say that you know what the good is or what the truth is in any ultimate sense. But we will presume that there are things that you're doing that for one reason or another you know are not in your best interests. There's something about them that you just know you should stop. They're kind of self-evident to you. Other things you're going to be doubtful about. You're not going to know which way is up and which way is down. But there are things that you're doing that you know you shouldn't do. Now, some of those you won't stop doing. For whatever reason, you don't have the discipline, or maybe there's a secondary payoff, or you don't believe it's necessary, or it's too much of a sacrifice, or you're angry or resentful or afraid, who knows? So forget about those for now. But there's another subset that you could stop doing. It might be a little thing. Well, that's fine. Stop doing it and see what happens. And what'll happen is your vision will clear a little bit. And then something else will pop up in your field of apprehension that you will also know you should stop doing, and that you could stop doing, because you strengthened yourself a bit by stopping doing the particular stupid thing that you were doing before. That just puts you together a little bit more. And you could do that repeatedly for an indefinite period of time. And you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to ever be able to formulate a clear and final picture of what constitutes the truth and the good. But it does mean that you'll be able to continually move away from what's untruth and what's bad. And, you know, that's not a bad start.
First, you'll have to start paying attention to your actions. Ask yourself, is what I'm doing going to lead me to where I want to be in life? You find yourself constantly bored, daydreaming about the future or past, or counting down the minutes until the day ends. It's probably because you feel disconnected from what you're doing. Cherish your time. Try to spend your free time doing things that you enjoy doing, rather than wasting time. For example, rather than spending your weekends watching television, spend them partaking in your hobbies or spending time with loved ones and new friends. Measure your productivity by engagement, not achievement. Not everything you do has to be productive in the conventional sense, but activities should be engaging. Keep in mind that it is perfectly fine to spend some time doing nothing and just being lazy each day. This can actually help with your imagination and self-awareness. Strive for a balance between doing things you want to do and allowing yourself to just be.
We all make mistakes. We all have times we give in to temptation, let our emotions take over. The condemning voices come saying, you blew it. It was your own fault. God's never going to help you. That's not the way our God is. When you can't come up to His level, He says, don't worry, I'll come down to yours. He's not so high that He won't come low. And it's good to see Him as all-powerful, holy, the creator of the universe. But if you only see Him that way, you'll be intimidated, overwhelmed. I'll never measure up. You have to see Him as the God who stoops. He comes down to the messy places. He's a God that will get His hands dirty. When you've fallen, when you're broken, when you knew better but you did it anyway, you think you're far from God. No, get ready. He's coming after you. The scripture says He leaves the 99 sheep and goes after the one sheep that's lost. He could have stayed with the 99 that are on course. He could have been satisfied. I don't want the trouble. That sheep shouldn't have wandered off in the first place. But He goes to messy places. He went to the hog pen to get the prodigal son. He'll go into a club. He'll go into dysfunction, into failure, into compromise. You can't get too far down, too far off course, too many mistakes that God will leave you alone. He'll come down to where you are. And the beauty is He comes not to condemn you, not to point out all your mistakes. He comes to lift you, to restore you, to free you, to set you on a new path. Psalm 113 says, He stoops down from the heavens to look at the earth. He lifts the poor from the dirt and the needy from the garbage dump. He sets them among princes. He'll stoop all the way to a garbage dump, all the way to the dirt. Notice what He does. He doesn't just bring you out, but He honors you. He sets you among princes. He doesn't hold our mistakes against us. He takes what was meant for harm and uses it to our advantage. And I thank God that He's all-powerful. I thank Him that He's holy. But I also thank Him that He's the God who stoops, the God who picks me up when I fall, the God who shows me mercy when I get off course, the God who comes to messy places and rescues me, restores me, and sets me in a place of honor. Where would we be without the God who stoops? My father was a teenager growing up during the Great Depression. He's very poor. He knew nothing about God, no future to speak of. He had to drop out of high school to work on the farm to help try to keep food on the table. His parents were good people, but they didn't have any kind of faith, any kind of spiritual awareness. Looked like my father would be the same way, just struggle through life, mediocre, no purpose. But at 17 years old, he was walking home from a nightclub at 2 o'clock in the morning. He looked up at the stars, and for some reason, he began to think about God, what He was going to do with his life. He felt this sense of destiny. On the coffee table at home, there was a family Bible. It was just there for decoration. They never read it. He walked in that night. He was drawn to it. He went over and opened it up. The pages fell to a picture of Jesus standing at a door and knocking. The caption read, "If you'll open the door, I'll come in." My father didn't understand religion, didn't understand theology, but he did understand opening a door. The next day, he went to church for the first time with a friend. At the end of the service, the pastor invited people to the altar that wanted to receive Christ. My father wouldn't go. He was too afraid. His friend said, "John, if you'll go, I'll go with you." My father walked down the aisle, gave his life to Christ. He went on to become a minister and started Lakewood, did great things with his life. Why did he feel that way coming home from the nightclub? What was that? The God who stoops. Sometimes we say, we found God. The truth is, God wasn't lost. We didn't find Him, He found us. He chose you before you could choose Him. I love the fact that you can never get so low that God won't come down and pick you up. You're not too far off course. You haven't failed too many times. You haven't had too many bad breaks. God is coming to you right now. He's breathing on your life in a new way with fresh vision, fresh passion. New doors are going to open. The greatness God put in you is about to come out. What He's destined for you to accomplish will come to pass. Now, don't write yourself off and don't write anyone else off. Don't give up on your child. Don't quit praying for that loved one. The psalmist said, God, wherever I go, I can't get away from your presence. If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I go down to the depths of the ocean, you're still there. There is no depth that God won't stoop to free you, to restore your family member, to bring your child back home. This is what happened with Saul in the scripture. He was the biggest enemy of the church. He was very educated, an influential leader, but he was against believers. He went around having them arrested and put in prison. It looked like he would be the last person that God would have anything to do with. He was creating havoc, making the disciples miserable. But God loves to redeem people that we think are not redeemable. He loves to take people that look too far gone, not a chance, and make them into a chosen vessel, bring them into purpose and destiny. On his way to arrest believers, Saul had letters in hand from the council, permission to put them in jail. Suddenly, a bright light shined down from heaven, knocked Saul off his horse. A voice boomed out, Saul, why do you persecute me? He said, who are you, Lord? The voice said, I am Jesus. God was saying, you're against me now, but that's not your purpose. That's not who I created you to be. I love you too much to let you miss your destiny. And even though I'm a God that sits high, even though I'm all powerful, I'll stoop low to get you into your calling. God will go to great lengths to bring you into your destiny. You may feel like you missed it. You made too many mistakes. You're too far off course. The good news is we serve a God who stoops, the God that will reach down to redeem, to restore, to set you among princes. He's not going to just bring you out. He's going to honor you, promote you, give you influence, cause you to shine. That day was a turning point for Saul. He became the Apostle Paul and went on to write over half of the New Testament. One verse he wrote in Romans talks about the grace that God freely gives us. If anyone understood grace, it would have been Paul. The word he used for freely in the original language is promiscuous, meaning that God's grace will go to anyone. If someone is promiscuous, they're unrestrained, they're loose. That's the way God's grace is. It's not looking for perfect people. You can be struggling with an addiction and grace will come looking for you. You can be working in the wrong kind of place and grace will come knocking at your door. You can be dishonest, manipulative, and grace will show up at your house. You can be discouraged, thinking you've messed up too many times. You brought the trouble on yourself. Like the prodigal son, grace will come into the hog pen. You can't get so low that God won't stoop down. His grace is unrestrained. It doesn't have limitations. It will go after anyone. See, we look at people and make judgments based on how we were raised, how we see things. We think God wouldn't have anything to do with them. They're not living right. They party too much. He's too dishonest. Her dress was too short. They use bad language. They come from a different religion. The longer I live, the more I realize God will save who He wants to save. He'll stoop down to people that don't have a good reputation. Just ask Zacchaeus. He was dishonest. He cheated people. Everyone knew he wasn't trustworthy. Yet Jesus called him out of a huge group of people. Said, I want to go to your house for dinner.
God doesn't want me worrying about anything. Nothing, nada, zip, zero. Philippians 4:6, don't worry about anything. That's pretty clear. Instead, pray about everything. We've talked about this many times. You can pray or you can panic. If you're not praying, you're panicking. You can worry or you can worship. If you're not worshiping, you're worrying. You invite worship in the front door, worry goes out the back door. And so God says, I don't want you worrying about anything. Now, why? He says, worry is unreasonable. It's unreasonable. In other words, it doesn't make sense. It's illogical. It is irrational. It is unreasonable. In the first place, we typically worry about the wrong thing. We worry about the little stuff. How I look,
how I appear, what I say, who I'm talking to. Stuff, am I going to be late for this meeting? Stuff that isn't going to matter in 5 years. It's all temporary. If you're really going to worry, and God says you shouldn't, but if you were going to worry about things that are eternal. Don't worry about stuff that's not going to matter tomorrow. Jesus says you should never worry, not only because it's unreasonable, it's unnatural. Nature does not worry. It's unnatural. Jesus says, look at the birds. Look at the birds of the air. They don't sow or reap or store away in barns. They're not worried about, do I have enough to live on? And he said, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more valuable than birds? If God takes care of birds, isn't he going to take care of you? And then he says in verse 28 and 29, Matthew 6, why do you worry about your clothes? You go out and look at the flowers. Look at the field lilies. They don't worry about how they look. Yet King Solomon, in all of his glory, was not clothed as beautifully as they are. And he said, all of creation trusts my care except humans. He's saying worry isn't natural.